Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled are operatic soprano Catherine Ireland and author Stephen J. Fogel. Australian soprano Catherine Ireland has sung on stages across the United States and Europe. She was a resident artist with both the San Diego Opera and the LA Opera companies, and she received the prestigious Royal Opera House Scholarship to study at the National Opera Studio in London. I have to get this all right because National Opera and Royal Opera are
Royal
different.
Opera House, Covent Garden.
Yes, Covent Garden. They are different. They're different, aren't they?
Yes.
She's been an awardee of several different organizations, especially the Lauren Zachary competition, which I remember for years as being such a phenomenal thing.
It is.
And she's a 3-time finalist for the Metropolitan Opera National Council audition. So, Catherine, we've heard your voice on commercials. We've heard in many different places. Tell us about those things.
Well, they're all fun things to do, and sort of outside the box of opera, which is really fun. One of the first experiences I had, I was singing an opera down here at Los Angeles Opera, and had a big long brown wig on, and they pulled me in very tight, and I probably looked gorgeous and little and cute. And then they came in and they contacted the company because they were looking for a singer to sing on a commercial. And
that's how they did it.
Yes, this is one of them. And so they asked me to come and sing a couple of days later a Wagnerian piece, which is like the total other end of the spectrum for me. But I turned up, and I'd just been singing in Italy, so I had very blonde, short hair, and once the wig was off, and I was quite tanned, and I walked in and they all went,
"Who is it?
Who is this? This is not what we're thinking about."
You're kidding.
And they were quite disappointed.
Oh, that's really funny. Because that is really outside of the box for a classical opera singer, isn't it, to be doing commercials?
Yes. Well, it was in years past, but I think now it's a lot more common. In fact, there's a couple on now, the Honda commercial, which is sung by a good friend of mine, Jonathan Mack. And there's, lots of friends that I have commercials
And
on.
how do they get those roles? Do you have an agent, or do they just look for opera singers?
I think different ways. Both they have agents, and some singers are actually with agents who do these commercial things, and also the ways that I've had it. My management company,
and saw you.
They came and saw me.
But the interesting thing is, you said it's like totally the opposite from Wagnerian. Tell us what those two opposites are.
Well, I'm a lyric soprano. And
which means
I sing the high repertoire. So my voice is very high. It's light generally, aside from today.
It sounds darky.
It does, doesn't it?
Would that be a mezzo? Would that be a mezzo then?
A lower voice is a mezzo. Yes, but the soprano range has quite a number of different ranges, and one of them is to sing the Wagnerian, the Wagnerian repertoire.
It is the high one is?
Well, it's just more forceful. It's called spinto, and there's the dramatic soprano too, and they sing the heavier orchestrated repertoire. And that heavier orchestrated repertoire is generally the more recent repertoire. So Wagner, Strauss, and the voice is ready to cut through the orchestra. Mine is more lyric, which is lighter. So when I turned up for this particular audition and they wanted me to sing, this very heavy stuff, I said, well, I really am not suited for this, but I'll do it for you. And I think by that stage they'd looked at me and they thought, yeah, she doesn't even look like the singer we want. So I sang it for them, and then I left and they rang me and they said, we're not going to use you because you don't look like the singer that we want. We wanted someone that we could put braids on and horns and a spear and something,
They wanted something like that in like the commercial sense of opera.
How people visualize it.
Yes, exactly.
So I was disappointed at the time, but then they rang me the next day and said, actually, we're going to use your voice and put an actress in for the...
Oh, so that's what when we said we heard your voice on these,
yes,
it was your voice.
It was.
They did, even though you weren't...
The singer. I wasn't the actual actress. But funnily enough, and I'll just mention this, the actress that they chose was also a girl, an opera singer, and differently shaped to me, a lovely girl. My surname is Ireland and her surname is England.
Oh, you're kidding.
And we met at the party of the producer, and I walked into the party, and she captured me straight away. And I don't think we'd met at that stage, but she said to me, "Oh, that outfit's fabulous on you. I have a dress that would look sensational on you."
You're kidding.
And I said, "Really?" And I said, "Who are you?" And she said, "I'm Alison England." And I said, "I'm Catherine Ireland." And we shook hands, and we both knew.
And you had both done the same thing. Isn't that great?
It is.
Are you friends now? Or
yes, we've met a few times.
Well, we're just chatting away here, but I want to know what it takes to be a resident. Because you were you said you were a resident at LA Opera and San Diego. What does that mean? What does a resident of those opera companies do?
Well, it's a wonderful experience. It's really, you learn an enormous amount of repertoire. You're given an enormous amount of responsibility. You're an advocate for the company. A lot of the singing gigs that you have to do are often in people's private homes or for companies.
Oh, you do. How do you get to be a resident?
Lots of auditions.
Oh, you
Many
do?
years of practice and training, and then you audition and they choose you.
Oh, they do?
Yeah.
And then how long can you stay?
I was there for 2 seasons, so over a period of sort of 3 years, and in that time I had to learn 16 roles down here at Los Angeles Opera.
Is that right?
Of which I think I sang 9 of them.
Oh, that's pretty good, isn't it?
Yes, some of them were very small. Some of them were only a page long.
But you
some of them
are working.
were extensive. And of the 16, the other ones that I learned, I was covering the lead soprano who would come in from out of town, who had a big name. And so I would cover her and rehearse her. The stand and rehearsing till she comes? Till she arrived. Or one of the ones I covered, she was pregnant, so there were times that she just didn't have it in her to sing, so I would get up and do it.
So you would go on stage, or you would do the rehearsals?
Just the rehearsal.
Just the
I
rehearsals.
never had to fill in for them on stage, which I was disappointed about.
Oh, I know.
But still, it's a wonderful experience.
And how long can you stay? Is there a limit on it?
I think they do limit it. Yeah, I think they do. Because they want a turnover of young new blood. Everybody wants to bet on the fresh new horse that's coming to town.
Yes, and it gives you a chance to learn all these different things. And to go into somebody's home or into a school.
Yes,
to represent the opera.
To represent the company. That's right. And just the turning over of the repertoire, learning so much repertoire in such a short time. It's good for the voice.
We talked about the Royal Opera House
in
Covent Garden. Is that different from the other Royal Opera House?
No. That's it. It was the Covent Garden that provided the scholarship.
Not the English National Opera.
Which is different.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. But that also is in Covent Garden, right?
Yes,
English National.
just around the corner.
But the interesting thing that I never knew is that English National sings everything in English.
They do.
So how did you get auditioned, obviously, or you won a scholarship?
I won a big scholarship. I'm from Australia. And
from Australia.
We had a number of major scholarships that you could sing for. And there was one for the Metropolitan Opera, one for Covent Garden, and a Frank,
so you were
German
auditioning
house.
for several different...
Actually, I didn't audition for the other ones. It was a time in my life where I was moving around singing, and so I was not in the right place to audition for them all. But I was there to audition for the Covent Garden one. So I did that. And after 100, I think they took 109 singers, and they brought it down to 60 odd, and then they brought it down to 23 and then 10.
You're
and
kidding.
So,
How long were you there?
In London, 12 months.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
was it
wonderful.
great?
It was wonderful.
Oh, is there a difference between the European companies and the American companies, did you feel?
In some aspects. Size is one thing. The European
yeah.
companies are often much smaller.
They're smaller?
Well, the houses are much smaller there.
Oh.
Yeah, the houses there range from about 500 to 1,000 seats, whereas a lot of the houses here start at 1,000 seats, even small ones.
So it's different in singing.
Yes,
also
singing, and even just the way they the schedule. If you're with a Fest House, which is a German company, which a German company will have. You'll often be the soprano of the house, and so you will sing 4 or 5 different performances a week, and you might sing Musetta in La Bohème on Monday, Susanna in La Notte di Figaro on Tuesday, Sophie in Der Rosenkavalier on Thursday, and then Lucia in Lucia de l'Amour on Saturday.
And then when do you rehearse?
Well, you've rehearsed for months before, or you're rehearsing during the day for the other operas that you're going to put on in a month's time, which will be 4 completely different operas.
Is that right? So
you're doing a big tenor. So you're the Fest House soprano or baritone or tenor.
But that is such a learning experience, isn't it?
Invaluable, invaluable. It's like the residence that we have here.
Residency.
Invaluable.
When you decided to be an opera singer, was it in your family? Was there music in your family?
No.
How'd you decide then?
I don't know. I just loved to sing, and my first teacher was an experienced opera singer, and he introduced me to my first little tiny 24 Italian songs and aria song, and I loved the idea of singing in another language, and I thought I could do it, and I just loved singing.
Isn't that fantastic? Well, loving singing puts you on the stage at Disney Hall with the California Philharmonic, right?
That's true.
And the conductor is Victor Venner. Mm-hmm. And what do you sing in that with that orchestra? Or have you sung with them before?
I have. I've done some Puccini pieces in the past with them from different Puccini operas, and some excerpts from Andrew Lloyd Webber things.
Oh, that was great when he does that. He's so wonderful, the way he mixes everything, isn't it? It's just like you want to laugh when you talk about him.
It's clever. You think about it, you get the program to begin with, and you think, how can he possibly put Beethoven on with Disney?
Which is what you're doing,
Which
right?
is what we're doing, but it works.
How many rehearsals do you have to go to with that?
We had one on Tuesday night at Disney Hall, which was wonderful. And it'll be my debut at Disney Hall this Sunday.
Oh, it will be.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, great. Well, we'll be there to watch you.
Oh, thank you.
But you have a huge chorus behind you?
180. 180. That's
and how does
enormous.
Your voice come out?
Well, you know.
Are you the only woman?
No, there's another woman, a mezzo, with me as well, Maria Basaraba.
Oh, she sings with you, and then you have
the
a tenor
Nights.
And a baritone?
Yes, and we'll all do the Beethoven Nights together. This is the 4th movement of Beethoven's 9th Symphony. He has the first 3 movements, which are all symphonic, and then this last movement is choral and singing. And it's the very famous one, Come Sing a Song of Joy.
And it's very,
very big.
Uplifting, right?
Yep.
Oh, cool.
Written by Stiller, and so it's a wonderful piece. And then surrounding it, we have pieces from The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast.
Can you sing those songs?
I am.
Do you like
I love them because I teach singing as well.
You teach at where? At Citrus College?
Citrus College, yes.
That's fantastic. So do you teach those things too?
Yeah, that's what the kids generally love to learn the Disney things because they're familiar with. They're young. So they hear it. They hear it, and that's what they're familiar with. And Disney also auditions at the college I teach at, so they like to hear that the repertoire that they're going to be using down at Disneyland because they get use our singers.
At Disneyland, but then also with Victor Venner at the California Philharmonic,
that's right?
Disney and Beethoven.
That's right. It's almost like, water and oil. But it just happens to work,
Well, we're so glad you came today to tell us about everything. Thank you very much, Catherine
My
Ireland.
pleasure, Joan.
And don't go away. We'll be right back with Steve Foley. Fogel. Oop. Yeah, can we do that? Go ahead. Where do I start? And don't go away. We'll be right back with author Stephen Fogel. Hi, welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with author, actor, painter, and stand-up comedian Stephen J. Fogel, who was born in Los Angeles, graduated from Hamilton High School and the University of Southern California. He set his goal to be a millionaire by the time he was 30. We're pretty sure that wasn't going to happen by being an author or an artist or even a stand-up, right? You had to do something else. What did you do?
Well, first of all, when I was that age, it never even occurred to me that I would ever be anything other than a regular business guy.
Okay.
And I went into the real estate business, and the kind of thing where you literally that they talk about in the books, where you buy a little house and you buy a second house and then you get a bigger this and a bigger that.
Oh, you did? You were working like that?
Yeah, and well, actually, it's first I tried being a real estate broker, but my false pride didn't allow me to do any good at that.
So how did business come so easy to you?
Well, it just did, and a lot of it has to do with the purpose why I wrote this book. And when I was young, I had so many hang-ups, which I wasn't even aware of, that my coping strategy of dealing with them was to pretend they weren't there and to bury myself in as an aggressive young business guy.
Well, as you were being a young, aggressive business guy, did you look to the arts for kind of diversion?
Never had a clue. I remember
you didn't?
when I was in grammar school, first, second, third grade. I remember with great pride, I made a wonderful turkey out of an apple using using those ice cream sticks.
Exactly.
And to this day, I love that turkey. And I remember drawing some other pictures I liked. But then along the way, probably, someone told me, pop that bubble and said, oh, these are nice kid things. And then my art career was over.
Well,
and
then
by the way, now I'm a painter. I've been painting every day for 20 years.
That's what I mean. So how did you then find a way to paint? Did you take lessons?
Well, when I first started painting, I was probably in my mid-30s. And in the ebbs and flows of life, I was ebbing instead of flowing.
But here you are, mid-30s.
Yeah.
You swore you were going to be a millionaire by the time you were 30.
Yes.
Did you make that?
Yeah.
You did make that. So
Yeah.
then you could paint.
No, but it doesn't work that way for me.
It doesn't work.
What it is for me, my process has always been that when I'm in a void, when things aren't going well, when I'm in a vacuum, I always try and avoid it by finding something that'll get me out of it.
I see.
And I was so bored, even though I had a beautiful wife and a couple of kids, it was, I didn't want to be disloyal or anything bad, but there was nothing happening. So I saw an ad at Beverly Hills High School for an adult painting class.
Oh,
and so I
yeah.
decided to take it. At the time, again, I was in my 30s, and I felt like a child in it because it was more like Leisure World. And they sat me at a little desk with the other people, gave you something like crayons and magazines, and said, copy this. And I found I liked it. And then after doing that for 2 semesters and enjoying it, I decided to graduate, and I enrolled myself at UCLA's Extension, where the teaching quality was incredibly better, and there I bonded with a teacher who showed me how to get the right materials, and he invited me to go into life drawing classes, and the life drawing classes were totally cool.
So did the same thing happen to you for stand-up comedy?
Well, the stand-up, I like to think of myself as an accomplished artist and businessman, stand-up and with acting,
Yeah.
but with stand-up comedy, I wanted to push the envelope and see if I could do it.
Oh,
so I
could
took
you?
a class.
Yeah.
I appeared a couple of times at the Comedy Store,
Yeah.
filled the place up with my friends.
Of course.
And I didn't even get pity. They all really enjoyed it.
Did they?
And I enjoyed it.
Okay, so that was great. Now, another thing was independent films.
Oh, yes.
Producing. Did you do that?
Yes, I've produced 3 or 4 films, and a friend of mine told me when I was asking about it, how do you go about it? And he said, generally, the guy with the money finds the guy with the experience. The guy with the experience ends up with the money, and the guy with the money ended up with the experience.
That's exactly
So that's my
right.
career in show business.
That's fantastic, though.
I did get a leading part, though. It only cost me $700.
Oh, that's good. You got to be in the film, in your own film.
Oh, yes.
But what motivated you to write your first book, which was it was a Yes I Can Guide to Mastering Real Estate?
Yeah, I had a compulsion that I felt I wanted to write it. And I suppose somewhere I wanted the acknowledgement, but I'm not even sure that was it. So I found someone who I know quite well and who's a writer, and I asked him to help me with it.
That was the experience from independent films?
Yeah. Well, no, this guy, you know, there are guys like, my experience in independent films was much like the producers in the movie, in the play.
The joke.
But yes, but my friend, who's still my friend of 30 years, the writer, is a fine, fine man with a good heart.
But you knew where to go. You knew how to find the right person.
But in any way, he interviewed me on what I already knew.
Oh, I see.
I rewrote it, and rewrote it, and he helped me organize it. And at the end of writing the book, I found, by the way, at this time I had a business that had maybe 3,000 or 4,000 apartments in Los Angeles.
Oh,
so I was quite successful in it. So there was no money motivation. But writing the book, I found out what I really knew and read my own book and learned I had a system, which, by the way, for this book, which I wrote the book purely to find out what I knew about finding my own salvation.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. You knew about real estate, and you knew how to give advice in real estate, but you didn't know about how to give advice in managing your mind. I mean, my mind is not always my friend.
If I ever meet Woody Allen, I'm going to find out whether I've had more therapy than him or he's had more therapy than me.
Okay,
I've had more therapy than anyone I've ever known. I've done seminars, I've done self-help books, and I have been trying to make myself happy for the majority of this lifetime.
Okay, Woody. Now we got it. But
yes, exactly.
But did you take writing workshops, or did you just find someone who knew how to put down your thoughts?
Not even that. I found someone that could have my thoughts transcribed and could organize them.
Oh, that's what you need, right?
Yes.
Okay, so my mind is not always my friend. One of the things you talk about is the beginner's mind, which means?
They call it, in the Zen stuff, they call it monkey mind. Which
monkey mind is...
In a beginner's mind, I see you exactly as you are this moment, and the voice in my head says not a word, and I'm in admiration of who you are. As an adult, I say, you look better than this one, not as good as that one, you're going to make me feel good, you're going to insult me.
That's the beginner's mind.
No, the beginner's mind sees you in your natural beauty.
Right. Okay.
The monkey mind, which is what we get by the time we're adults, certainly me, is all over the place, judging and predicting and trying to save myself from anything bad.
I see. Oh, saving yourself from being a part of that stuff.
Well, what the voice in our head does is the voice in our head has an agenda, one single agenda, and that's to keep us safe. And by the way, I wanted to find the voice in the mind. The voice in the mind, each one of us has that voice talking to us almost 24/7. And most of us are led to believe, or we just assume, that's who we are.
Do we hear it?
Oh, yes. We hear it silently. Have you heard your voice in your head?
Sometimes I haven't heard it, but I think sometimes it's telling me don't go this way or don't go that way. That was what you must mean.
100%. Or it's like, I'm afraid of this, or that's a good-looking guy, or, gee, I wish I had one of those, or I wish my house were cleaner.
I see that. What's a woolly mammoth factor?
The way the voice in our head came into be is thousands and thousands of years ago, when we were what we consider from the movies cavemen. We lived in, we were hunters and gatherers. Man didn't know how to grow its own food yet, and we didn't have tools yet. So we lived in packs of 30 or 40, and it was like that little village you needed to survive in, and you could find food as a group where maybe one guy would go blank for a day, and the woolly mammoths may be killing you. So with your group of 30, you could protect yourself. So if you got your group mad at you, and they said, you're out of this group, you're going to die. You can't survive on your own.
Because you can't do it, right?
Yeah. So because of that, from those woolly mammoth days, what the voice in our head is purpose is to always keep us safe. And one of the ways it knows to keep us safe, and this is called the Reptilian Cortex, and everybody has it. It's programming from thousands of years ago that we still do.
Well, that's what I say, is, as you say, our mind programmed to those prehistoric times?
Yes.
You say that.
Yes.
Is it true?
I believe it's
We
true.
are.
But not only do I believe it true, but pretty much everybody in the brain science business of today believes
I
it's
see.
true.
Because
It's like,
that's something that you stress, that we're programmed to these prehistoric times.
yes, we are, and there's no way to get around it. That's the way we're built. The easiest way for me to explain it is the voice in our head we think is me, but it's not. The voice in our head is like the lady on the global positioning system of my car. She tells me where to go. She's supposed to get me to the wrong destination. But unfortunately, if I mistakenly put the wrong address in, I go to the wrong place. So we're kids, and the teacher tells us, 7-year-old kid, volunteer to answer a question. I put my hand up, and the class laughs at me. All of a sudden, I am no longer a volunteer. And 40 years later,
you, right?
Yes, 40 years later, when someone says that, the global positioning system in my head says, don't go to that address.
Right. I'm not going to put my hand up. I'm not going to answer it. I'm going to get laughed at.
Yes.
Well, in keeping with that, when you talk about what went on before, how do we live in the present and not in the past?
That's a wonderful question. The answer to that is the first step is knowing that I am not the voice. The voice is my personal board of directors. Once you know that voice is always giving you suggestions, and you know you don't have to take those directions. Remember Jack Webb? He was from Dragnet.
Just the facts.
Just the facts, ma'am.
Right.
And then you look back at the existing thing that just happened and you say, what happened? Did the person really insult me? Or did the person just say something that I didn't like to hear? Did the person really intend to harm me?
Right.
Or is that the mom or the dad that beat me up as a kid that is coming back into my head and saying, get mad at her?
Well, then how do we know what's right? What part is right of that?
What you do is play the scene back to yourself without adding anything other than just the facts,
Just the
ma'am.
facts, I see.
Yeah, and then once you know that you don't have to listen to the voice in your head, then you can choose to do its suggestion.
So you're not doing monkey mind.
No.
You're not judging,
No,
right? You're just listening
100%.
to the facts. Okay, so are people comfortable in their pain?
Sure,
They are, we
if you
do.
go back to some of the stories from the Holocaust, there were people who got comfortable living in the sewers rather than taking the risk of getting killed. And the smell of the sewers, they lived with it and didn't notice it. And there isn't half a dozen of us that don't have a marriage that doesn't have something we don't like,
Right.
a child that's doing something that doesn't fit their picture, a
Right.
job, and we all get used to living in that same sewage.
Well, then we end up having this fear of change.
Oh,
Isn't
horrible
that
thing.
right?
Yes. And
So what stops us from that? How do we stop it?
by distinguishing that, looking at just the facts. Now, what's to be afraid of? If I
Oh,
lose
I
this
see, right.
job and get a new job, you know what you got. You don't know what you're going to get.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're afraid to do that.
Yes, and then you have, in all situations, there are 3 options. There's door number 1, door number 2, and door number 3. So door number 1 is accept the sewage, accept the pain exactly as it is. And if you totally accept it, genuinely the pain goes away because it's no longer painful.
Oh, because you don't, that's right.
Yeah.
Because you've said, okay,
I'm going
that's it.
to give the metaphor of a marriage that's
Right,
uncomfortable.
right.
If all of a sudden the things that annoyed you about your partner, you say the marriage is more valuable than the annoyance of her being late.
So you just forget that.
Yeah, you just accept it.
You accept it.
That's
accept it.
that's
You don't
door
get-
number 1. Accept it, but you have to accept it totally. No resentment.
Okay.
Door number 2 is change it. So
Change
if it's
it.
that marriage, you work it out with your wife. Maybe you go to therapy. Maybe you find a way to bribe her to be on time. Whatever your system is,
So
you do
you work it out, right?
That's door number 2.
Right.
And door number 3, if you're not willing to accept it totally, and if it doesn't work to change it, you're both too stubborn, then door number 3 is removing yourself from the situation.
Oh, that's perfect.
And that applies to every problem in life.
And that's exactly what our director just told us. We have to remove ourselves from this interview because
the
our
time went so
is
fast
up.
with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thanks for watching Steve Fogel today and for being with us. Keep writing to JAQUIN1@AOL.com. And we'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles.